Hey Nathan, have you seen Luke?
Last I heard, there was some like creepy German guy looking for him with some younger science type dude. I don't know. I think they went after him.
Well, I hope at least the science dude is making sure that he's safe, you know?
Yeah, he seemed to be a lot more concerned with the overall health and safety of Luke rather than the German dude who seemed really to live up to some like German scientist like standard. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not so sure about his human rights record.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll have to make sure to do some kind of rescue mission to get Luke back.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah, we'll infiltrate the place. We'll hire some bounty hunter to turn on the guild and the
yeah.
code. Go
For
after
sure.
him. Hello and welcome to Ignore the Bell. My name is Nathan.
And I'm Tyler.
And yeah, we do not have Luke in this episode. He's busy with a family function, and we're just going to go ahead without him.
Yep.
Um, all right, so we are talking about episode 3 of The Mandalorian, The Sin.
hmm
It's interesting. I watched a couple videos about this, right? And people are like, "Well, there's this sin, and then this sin, and then this," and I'm like, "Hey, the episode's called The Sin, not the sins. There's one.
Right.
We get to choose one, and I don't know which one it is that ultimately counts as the sin, but
Agreed.
yeah,
Yeah, I know it is a slightly confusing title.
yeah. The
I saw it
title
and I'm
didn't
just
quite make
like,
sense to me.
I don't get it. What is the sin?
Yeah, the sin. Now, before we get into the episode, then we do have a sponsor for today. So our sponsor, it is jetpacks. So jetpacks for all of you people out there who have been waiting for these things. The reason why you've had to wait so long is because everyone, all of the authorities know that initially everybody's going to be super excited and they're going to get one of these jetpacks and they're going to be flying around. They're going to have a great time. And then within approximately 2 minutes, some creep is going to say, "Oh, I can spy on some woman on the 20th floor of this apartment building." And then just like jet up there and just like, looking at her. Just like what happened with drones. It's the same thing. That's why jetpacks are not a purchasable item. Until now. Now, so I think they've come up with some kind of safety feature where I don't know. They're ensuring that creeps are not abusing this.
Yeah, either that or they are specifically targeting creeps. I don't know.
Exactly. That's our demographic. We're going after the creeps. Seems easy
Thank
enough
you for
advertising.
sponsoring this episode.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't know what that says about what you think of us, but
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that YouTube is okay with that as an advertiser as long as we're not specifically targeting children.
right, yes.
Then we're okay with that. Um, all right, so we're gonna save the discussion for the other side of the credits, right? But
Yeah.
we're good. All right, folks. I hope you enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, we're talking The Mandalorian, Episode 3, The Sin. So I want to talk about the director pretty early on here, and especially the direction of this episode, right?
hmm
Uh, this, I mean, I hesitate to say this, okay? I'm hesitating here, but I'm just going to say
Okay.
it that this is maybe the best 30 minutes of Star Wars we've had, like, in like 30 years. Like, since, I don't know,
Yeah.
1980, 1983, like 40 years, whatever that ends up being.
It is really incredible. This episode is so fantastic. Yeah,
It's,
just it's
yeah.
great.
And so, yeah, it really is. So one thing that I noticed, and I saw this was on Twitter yesterday, then people were talking about it. So the director of this is Deborah Chow, who is uh, she is the first woman to direct a live action Star Wars anything. And especially like with the Mandalorian, I think it's kind of interesting because there's been like some criticism, with one figure in particular online who has said like there's not any female character, and people
Right.
saying like that that Star Wars, like the Mandalorian, is just it's it's a little too atavistic. It's a little bit too much like this is how TV used to be and it was for men and it's not a diverse cast and all of this kind of criticism. And then it's like the best episode that we've had and some of the best Star Wars we've had yet. It's the first one directed by a woman. And I think that people should notice that. Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say with this too, and then I want to get your thoughts on this, is that so as far as I understand, Deborah Chow is scheduled to be the director. I don't know if she's going to be like the overall showrunner, but she's at least scheduled to be the director for however many episodes of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus. And so if this is what we're going to get with the Obi-Wan series, like, all right, we're actually going to have good Star Wars, not in the movies anymore, but for television, it's going to be great. I'm sorry. I know that you still.
Other than that, I really agree with you, though. This is, I am super excited to see what she does with the Obi-Wan series. Because I mean, you're going to have Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan too, and Ewan McGregor is incredible as an actor. So, I think getting those two together it is going to be so much fun. I'm so much more excited now that I know that she is directing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even realize. I didn't pay any attention to the director before I watched the episode, and it was only afterwards that I saw people were commenting on that, and I was like, oh yeah, like that's great. And it's it's great to see that she is scheduled to continue to do more with Star Wars, because more than anyone else, she's really got it.
Right.
I mean, like, she's really got it, because I love this episode. And before we go through like the whole episode chronologically, then I just want to say, like, to give kind of my overview of this, what I love about this episode is that there's not, even though there's plenty of action in this, there's enough subtlety in some character development where it's not overwritten. You don't have everybody saying every single thing that they're thinking. You know exactly what the Mandalorian is thinking, even though he's only got a few little lines of dialogue where he asks 2 different times what's going to happen to the child, to, this baby Yoda creature. You then realize that he can't go through with this because there's too much guilt, because you have all of this beautiful, beautiful visual storytelling of baby Yoda who reaches for the shifter knob, tries to put it in his mouth, right? It's like, you're gonna choke. This is a choking hazard. And, he tries to do that
so much.
Yeah. Mando puts it down, and then he goes back, realizes that it's that reminder, and then he makes the decision, he shuts down the ship, and then it's just exactly what's going on. It's just but there was no dialogue, there was no inner monologue, there was no explicit, oh, he's feeling guilty now. It actually respects the fact that we are paying attention. We know what's going on. We can read his body language when it's not even facial expressions. It's just body language. And you look at this and you go, wow.
The moments of silence, of him just, staring at that, at the shifter or whatever.
Yeah.
He doesn't say anything. He doesn't even move. Right? He's just there looking at it. But that pause that he has says so much.
Exactly. And it's not overproduced. You don't have some sound effect telling you what he's thinking. You don't have some sad, sentimental music that kicks in. So I'm saying, in terms of the direction, then, Chow, she gets it. She gets how to tell a story visually. And as much as I do have an appreciation for much of what J.J. Abrams does, and even with Rian Johnson, then it's there's stuff in there where I look at it and I say, yeah, that part's really good, and you did a great job with that sequence. But I would say my issue with J.J. Abrams, in terms of what he's done with cinema, not so much with his television work, but with cinema, is it feels like the entire thing is for people with ADD, right? That it's
Right.
just this terror that if we're not constantly bombarding you with dialogue and action and, like sound and jokes and all of this stuff, if there's not something every few seconds, then
Yeah.
people will get disinterested. And it's interesting because like you don't get that with Lost, but
Right.
um, so I'm saying like his television work, I think is different from what you
Yeah.
get with, but like because what he did to Star Wars, everybody says that about his with Star Trek,
Yes.
Then they say
Yeah.
like that's not Star Trek at all. They're good action sci-fi movies, but it's not Star
Mhm.
Trek. Uh, but I'm saying that Chow, she gets how to tell a story visually, and we have had this with both episodes 1 and 2. There's been a lot of silence, a lot of visual storytelling, which is great. Um,
Yeah.
but that you actually get that character development, even though I don't like the term, I really prefer character revelation. But he is developing to some degree as a character in this. We get to see that he continues to struggle through the ethics of what he's doing,
Yeah.
without hitting us over the head with it. And yeah, and then even with the action sequences, then it is not just over the top. He's the Terminator. He kicks in the door and just like bah 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 bah.
Yeah.
You get
It's not all lights, action, explosions. It is as is written on on our light box there. Then it is a stealth operation, and it is so carefully executed. Um,
yes,
he is so precise with everything. It is so fantastic to watch that.
yeah, the entire thing. Because he even like when he ends up getting surrounded, then he kind of
Yeah,
goes with it and he takes a knee, and it's like, oh, okay, I can't win this one, even though of course he's got this whole plan, that everything
yeah,
about it is strategic, right? And I'm saying that, and this is not, I'm genuinely not criticizing the newer Star Wars films, but you do see like when you've got whether it's Finn or Rey when they're fighting against Kylo Ren, there's really not much strategy. It's just
right.
right,
Yeah,
and it's like, and I'm not saying that
uh,
that's a bad thing because of where they're at, right,
right.
in terms of
Yeah,
characters, but it's like this great like bounty hunter Mandalorian who
yeah.
thinks
It
strategizes.
it is really interesting because, of course, in A New Hope, then Obi-Wan describes the lightsaber as not as clumsy or random as a blaster. And in this, we are seeing such precise,
Yes.
uh, carefully thought out movements with the blaster,
Right.
not with the lightsaber, which
Exactly.
has recently been depicted as clumsy and random.
Thank you. I'm so glad you brought that up because, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And where Chow, this is my point, is that she gets it. She
Yeah,
gets that, and because there's more to Star Wars than just the Jedi, and that
yeah,
she gets the fact that, you can't just give anyone a lightsaber because
right.
this has happened with, I know a lot of people were upset when Finn gets, the lightsaber in episode 7, right? And they're like, he's
Yeah.
not a Jedi. and,
Yeah.
but that you're not going to give Mando a lightsaber, but you get to show that somebody, a warrior who has been trained, who has been disciplined in all of these different, tactics and strategies, and everything to do with how to operate in a battle environment. That he is a very, very skilled warrior, but a skilled warrior doesn't mean you just act like the Terminator and it's like,
Right.
I've got all of this Beskar armor, therefore I don't need to hide. I don't need to use subterfuge. I don't need to use psychological tricks to, like indicate that I'm defeated when I'm really not, right? He's using all these different strategies to be successful. And even then, it's not enough. He still ends up ultimately kind of, having to he's not willing to surrender, but you know that it's over for him, right?
Right. Yeah.
And this is the third episode in a row where he can't do this on his own. He essentially is defeated. And then you get all of his buddies who, and you had even like that great moment earlier in the episode where it's like, oh, you get a little bit of tension with them. And so, but ultimately, no, they're on the same side and they come back together. And it's like, you look at the MCU and it's like, they would have stretched out that ridiculous, hey, there's trouble in paradise. They would have stretched it out for so long.
They would have had an entire fight sequence between Mando and the rest of them.
They would have.
Alter
Instead of this little
stop,
squabble.
We don't hurt our own kind. Oh, I guess you're right. And very telegraphed speech there. But yeah, we... It is so much better this way.
So much better. It's great that you because it is indicating, it's kind of like pointing to the fact that here's all the tension that exists in the group, and there's a reason for this tension, because you get all of this backstory in such an economical way that you find out it's like, oh, okay, only one of them can kind of go out at a time, and they obviously are not happy with the life that they're living, and they blame the Empire for it. And then you got this guy who's, going out there and earning this Beskar steel that was made by the Empire, and they stole it from us. So like you get that tension. You're like, oh yeah, there'd be a lot of tension. And living like that, there'd be a lot of tension. But it doesn't give us all of this on-screen plot of, look at how upset they are. Look at how they have to eat. Look at how they have to live. Like it's like, you'll get it. We'll tell you, like, pretty quickly, you're going to understand why there's all this frustration within their group. Yeah. But that ultimately they're still on the same side, and they come to his aid, and at the end, and it's great to see. Like, it's really fun.
Absolutely. that whole sequence is a lot of fun, but it's fun not because there's a lot of explosions, but because we care about the characters involved, because it is so satisfying to see them make themselves aware, right?
Yeah.
It is really incredible because they gave up their anonymity in order to protect one of their own. And you get that that's what they did. They didn't say, there was never a point where they said, we look after our own.
Exactly. And this is the thing, is this is where I get frustrated, because I feel like there's just so many producers who have got far too much influence in contemporary Hollywood when it comes to storytelling, because I feel like so many producers have this attitude of, you have to make everything so explicit because we want children to be watching this, and we want, preteens and early teens to be watching this. And my issue is, then you guys just don't understand kids, because kids are far smarter than they're giving them credit for. That Absolutely. Like, why is it that Star Wars has historically been loved by children from the 1980s forward, right? And it's like, is it because they were like super kid-friendly movies? And it's like, or is it because kids are actually able to watch something that seems a lot more mature and sophisticated than you would think them capable of being able to follow? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, they can handle more mature themes and subtlety in a show. And when I say mature themes, I don't mean like what's depicted on screen. I mean, like, you don't have to spell out everything in super explicit dialogue.
Yeah.
They'll follow along just like any human being.
And they will, if this helps them to develop themselves, to develop ways of interpreting emotions and body language, right? All of that, like, kids are able to learn through this medium.
Yeah.
and I like, yeah, I just, it's fantastic. Not that, I'm like, oh yeah, you should definitely show your kids The Mandalorian, but storytelling like this is
Yes,
so
exactly.
effective.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, I mean, overall, this entire episode, I thought was terrific, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I'm not sure if you want to, at this point, like kind of go through it in a little bit more detail or point to some things that you noticed.
Yeah, I think let's just go through the episode in order and yeah, pick up on any specific details that stand out to us.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, obviously, like it picks up kind of where the last episode left off, right? Where you've got
Hmm.
the little Yoda creature on the ship, right? Acting like just like a little baby, like a little, not a baby, but a little child, right? Where
Yeah,
he's just trying to, you know, get up to hijinks because he's bored and he's
yeah,
curious. Um,
absolutely. Anyone
and
who has ever taken a kid on a car ride knows that experience.
right, they don't know what they're not supposed to touch.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's interesting because you do get a lot of, I think, from body language. You're getting so much from Mando, right? Because that's kind of how Carl Weathers refers to him. So I'm just saying that's his name, I guess,
Yeah.
Mando at this point. Uh, where you can see that, like, you know, he's trying to be tough. He's
Yeah.
trying to, um, you know, not give in to this child and not coddle and to just treat it as impersonally as possible. And he's failing, right?
Right.
You can kind of see that in this scene where he's trying to treat the little Yoda creature like this is just another bounty and I don't care and I don't care and I don't care, but he clearly cares, right? And he tries to
Yeah.
like grab it and puts it back in that like egg bassinet thing, right? He just kind of grabs it by the back of his like cloak and then just like
Yeah.
plonks him there. And then you're like, oh, like, you know, the little Yoda creature kind of makes a cute little noise as like, ah, like as he's like being pulled back. And then you're like, that's not how you treat a baby, right? You're supposed to like grab a little baby like this, but he
Right.
just does it like it's an animal, like, you know, like a little kitten, grab it by the scruff of the neck and then just put it back there. But then he does the little turn of, you know, and he's like trying not to, like checking on it, but
Yeah.
he can't help himself. That's the episode right there of he can't help himself. He's trying to be tough. He's trying to be completely you know, uncaring in regards to this little creature, and he can't help himself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It's really incredible. I love that scene and the payoff later.
Yeah,
As we already talked about, with with the little
shifter
clutch
knob. Yeah,
shifter knob. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's just so perfect,
yeah,
so well executed. Yeah. All right, so he lands on the planet. He takes Baby Yoda or Yoda Baby over to get his bounty. Um, right? I think that's how
yeah.
that
That's
happens.
basically it. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
the Yoda creature's
It's
like kind of
it's
blown
really
away by.
interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting that there doesn't seem to be a lot of, you know, whole crowds of people on the streets stepping back and looking and like, oh, what is that? What is that? There isn't that. But the Yoda creature is so fascinated by everything.
Yeah. And I've heard like some people are saying like this indicates that it's like he's been really sheltered his entire life. And I'm like, it could be, but I mean, like little kids are seeing everything for the first time. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like little kids will like they'll just be walking down the street and they'll just freak out. They'll go, an ant, and they'll point at a
Right.
little ant. Do you know what I mean? Like they're blown away
Yeah.
by everything. And we just
Yeah.
kind of, as we get older, then we're just like, yeah, like I've seen that before. So I'm not going to pay any attention. Or even if you are impressed by something, then you know it's like, well, I gotta kind of act cool. Like I'm not that impressed by what's going on here, even
Right.
though I am, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but like he's certainly curious, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
he does seem a bit, you know, intimidated by everything.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, so Mando takes him in and one of the stormtroopers like grabs onto the floating crib
Yeah,
thing. Oh, you get that line from Mando. Careful. Like it's
like
so
you take it
simple.
easy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
take it easy. And it's like, you take it easy. And I'm like, what a jerk. And it's such a great job of establishing that this dirty stormtrooper, because like armor's literally dirty, right? This dirty stormtrooper is like, he's the jerk. You just
Yeah.
immediately, you're just like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense why he would say, you take it easy. It's like, hey, what is the Mandalorian even doing that's not taking it easy? Right.
Right.
And you just like, it just establishes so quickly. I look at that as like a screenwriter, and I'm just like, that is like just such a great, succinct way of establishing this guy's a jerk and we don't care about him at all.
Right. Yeah.
Or if anything, like we do care. We care that like we want to see him get hurt or get killed or
Yes.
something, right? That you've
Yeah.
established he's a
It
jackass.
solidifies our allegiances. It's
It sure does. Yeah. And just
um,
like that little exchange. It's really
yeah.
well done. Okay, so yeah,
Uh,
then he takes it into creepy Werner Herzog, who
yes.
is
Um, yeah, and I do want to bring up Werner did make his thoughts known after episode 2 came out, that apparently they were going back and forth between using, like they had like some scenes where they were using the puppet for Baby Yoda, and then
mm,
other ones where they didn't have the puppet there so that they could add it in CG. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Yeah, we just want to make sure that we have it in case we decide to use CG instead." And Werner apparently called them cowards for that. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's that is good." You're like, "Oh yeah, well we don't really know, how well the puppet will come across." Cowards.
right, right.
I just think that that's so brilliant because yeah, like the puppet is adorable, and if you try to do it in CG, like sure you can probably make it look just about the same, but why? Just
Right.
don't worry about it. The puppet will look great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is interesting. Um, yeah, so he's super excited to have this little baby Yoda creature, and then you get that little you've got the other scientist dude who seems to be much more sympathetic, that he genuinely cares
Yeah.
for the little Yoda creature, right? It's kind of like an animal rights activist working at SeaWorld, right?
Right.
It's just sort of like, I'm here because I love animals, and then it's like, but the corporate policy, and then it's like, no, this person just torn. That's to
Yeah.
be the position that he's in.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to help this thing in distress. This is the only place I can do that, but I don't want to see it get hurt. But kind of, my boss is like, you're gonna kill it.
Right. Yeah, yeah, and so this is the first time that we get Mando asking, "What are you going to do
Yeah,
with the child?" And it's great because he has already handed over the child, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and and he, he gets his payment, or he doesn't take the payment, but but it's at that point that he asks, right? Before he
Yes.
takes it.
Yeah, you got it.
And that is just so brilliant because he doesn't want to ask, right? He's
Exactly.
not
It's
he's
he's
not
reluctant
holding the
to ask,
child.
but he
Wait, wait,
cannot
wait,
help himself.
first, let me know what you're gonna do with it. No, no,
That's
no.
right.
He's like, yep, okay, I've completed it, and he wants to just walk away, but he can't help himself. He has to ask.
That's right.
He,
It's
just,
just like on the ship. You see this
yeah,
reluctance. He is reluctant to care. He does, and he is fighting his natural like his obedience to the guild, to the code, and all of this
yeah,
of it's another bounty. Don't care. And it's like just like on the ship, then it's like he can't help himself. He's like, is he okay? I just grabbed him by the back of his cloak, right? Like he does, and he's like, I don't want him to see that I'm looking, but I kind of need to check on
yeah,
him. And then here it's like, don't ask, don't ask, don't ask. What are you gonna do with him, right? It's just like he
yeah,
can't help it. That it continues to seep out, despite the fact that he is trying his very very best to tamp it down and ignore all of that. And then you get that really interesting little exchange from Werner Herzog, where he's like, like, oh, it's against the guild to ask or whatever. Like,
Right.
you have to
Yeah.
forget about it as soon as like you bring it in, and it's like, okay, that it's interesting that to be part of their union, they've got these like rules.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is really interesting. I feel like we get a little bit more about, Mando not fitting in with the rest of the Mandalorians,
Yeah,
which is then expanded upon in, I think, the very next scene, right? Because because he doesn't really. He's like, okay, fine, whatever. You won't tell me. I'll take the Beskar and leave,
yeah,
right? Because he doesn't want to care.
right.
Then he goes
And
back.
yeah, but it's also, and I heard somebody like talking about it as, and I didn't quite see it this way when I was first watching it, but I do think this is probably the correct reading of it, that it's a bit of a threat by that Werner Herzog
Mhm.
character, where he then says, it's easier to find Beskar steel than it is to find a Mandalorian, as in, like, and I just thought, like, I thought it was one of those, hey, aren't you a Mandalorian? Like, man up. Just
Yeah,
stop being sympathetic, stop being wimpy. But then the other reading is that it's a threat, where he's saying they're all dead. Like, watch yourself,
oh, right.
right? And I'm like,
Okay.
oh, if that's what he means by it, if it is that, and I think that's what I'm saying. I think that is the correct reading, that it is supposed to be a threat of, hey, almost all Mandalorians are dead. So if you're trying to like step out of line here in terms of what I expect from you, that if you're, starting to get a heart, then it's like, you know, there's plenty of other Mandalorians before you who've been killed. So don't
Right.
think that you're invincible.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah,
I do think there was a threat involved in that.
that's really interesting. I have to rewatch it now.
Yeah, yeah, because I rewatched that scene after I heard that comment, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Because like I said, I did not. I thought it was just more of a, hey, you're a Mandalorian, don't ask that question, and
Yeah,
it's more, hey, if you ask that question, there are consequences,
right.
right?
Yeah.
If you keep going down this road. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but he is out of step with the other Mandalorians, and you do see that they really resent the fact that he is getting payment and that he's sitting at a table with these Imperial
Yeah.
guys, right? And it's like, even though the Empire is dead, there's implicit within that is the, like, you can easily make the inference that it's like, oh, so the Empire is not dead. These guys are still working with the Empire in some capacity, and you know, I'm presuming that it's like, this is really where the First Order is coming from.
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It is uh it is really great, yeah, just really great storytelling to just see him, walking down this hall with all the other Mandalorians looking at
Yeah.
him. And again, because we can't see their faces or anything, but we can tell that they're all heavily invested in what he's doing.
Yep.
And I thought that it was more of them being in awe, right, of
Mm.
him, coming back with this whole container, right,
Oh, I saw it as
of payment.
resentment.
Um, well, I mean, it certainly became like I saw it afterward as resentment once we
Oh,
got
yeah. No,
past
I
that. But my
immediately. I don't know why, but something in their body language just indicated resentment to me.
mm. Well, I mean a little bit of resentment for sure because I think it was my thought was they were upset that he had gotten like they were resenting the fact that he got paid so much when they have been living underground, right?
Yes.
And then it became, oh, you got this from Imperials, and
Yes.
that's what they were actually resentful of. So it's just kind of interesting in like the way that it played out to me. But yeah, it is really great to see them. I thought that they were kind of going to be like in awe, but resentful on him getting, all this new armor, right? But then it
Right.
was again just that they were really upset about it being this imperial bounty, uh,
Right.
and all that that implies with him, working with the Empire essentially.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and I really did think that they were going to, yeah, just be very resentful toward him getting all new armor, but they weren't. Um, and yeah, we once again get the flashbacks
Yeah.
to Mando's childhood, a little bit more extended this time. Um, and yeah, I love uh, I kind of love the fact that they are doing it with the exact same setting, right?
Yes.
Where it's once again while he's getting new steel.
It's this memory trigger that he has.
Yeah,
It's something about the steel being made that's triggering his memories of being a child. Um,
yeah,
yeah, it. I think that it's. I don't quite get why that's the trigger for him, but I do appreciate the
right.
fact that there is a specific trigger.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed seeing the CIS super battle droid, basically from a child's perspective, right? In a community
Right.
where there is no Jedi,
Hmm.
um, just because you basically just see the one droid, right? The
Yep.
one battle droid who's marching around and just destroying everything. Like
Yeah.
it, and it is shown from his perspective, from a child's perspective, and
Right.
it is terrifying.
Yes.
And I think
And
that that
and
is done so well.
absolutely. And then you do get like that's where like his like resentment of droids comes from,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, for sure.
because he does seem to have an issue with droids, like because at least in the first episode then he doesn't want the droid driver, and we remember we
Yeah,
speculated on the reasons for that, but it does seem to be uh, leaning much more heavily towards, well, a droid killed his parents and his entire village, and like
yeah,
he becomes an orphan as a result, so naturally he's gonna harbor a bit of a resentment towards them.
yeah,
One would think, right?
yeah, for sure.
uh,
Yeah, and again, we're getting all of this, you know, subtly,
yes.
nuance. It's
Yes.
not, tell me about yourself. My parents were killed by a super battle droid during the Clone Wars.
Right.
No, we're not going to get dialogue like that. Like it's,
Exactly.
it
And it is
is
interesting because it seems to be involuntary memory. And I'm not trying to take this
right.
into literary of a direction, but Marcel Proust, who wrote In Search of Lost Time, then like that's really like the a big, big focus of that series of novels that he wrote. It's about involuntary memory, and that there's like these certain triggers that we have with our memory. And for him, it's a little Madeline cookie that he eats that, and it's like, and he takes a bite of it as an adult, and then it's just he's immediately pulled backwards in time to his childhood, to this very, very specific moment, and that kind of begins this whole like memoirs, but fictional memoirs, that just goes on for a couple million words. I'm not kidding. Like it's just like the whole collection's like this long, and anyway, and like Proust is, has got so many people who just absolutely love his work. I will reserve comment because, yeah, I've read enough Proust for a lifetime, is what I'm saying. That I'm done. I don't feel like I need to return to
Right.
Proust. But anyway, it's this idea of involuntary memories, that we have these memory triggers, and I think that everybody knows that. Like, it seems to be not so much a taste thing for most people, but it's smell, right? So that there's a certain
Mm,
aroma, a certain odor. When you smell it, then it just brings you back to this moment. And it's like you didn't choose to think about that memory. It just
right.
was all of a sudden in your mind. And then you're in a whole other time and place when you smell something. I mean, I know that I'm not the only one who has that. That seems to be, there's something about our sense of smell that then triggers something in our long term memory that just involuntarily pulls us back there. So, um,
Right.
I think that's what the show is doing very intentionally. It's this involuntary memory because he seems like the type of person who doesn't want to think about his past,
Yeah.
right? You don't see him journaling. He's not like sitting there at the end of every episode and it's like, Dear Journal, I thought of my parents again today. This little Yoda, right? Like, there's none of that, right? You look at like the end of like the X-Files, like, with like Scully
Yeah.
sitting there typing up her journal, or in like, I know you don't watch the show, but like Sons of Anarchy, that like you get a lot of journaling in that, and I'm just like, like he doesn't have any time for this introspection, but
I
he
would I
can't.
would love to see the fan fiction though of Mando's journal.
Oh man, oh, I might have to turn that into like a Twitter account.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Um,
because yeah, that'd be really fun to read.
yeah.
Now,
For
I
sure.
do have some questions for you here, because when he is meeting with, I don't even know what her name is, Mrs. Mandalorian, like, like Miss Mandalorian leader. I don't know what her name is, but the one who's making the steel armor.
The blacksmith,
Yeah, sure. The
steelsmith.
Yeah, steelsmith. Sure. Then anyway, she asks him the question. She's like, oh, like, you've never had your helmet taken off? And he's like, no. And you've never removed it? No. And then I'm like, I understand that. I think it's supposed to be more of a metaphor. Well, not even metaphorical, but like it means in battle, that
Right.
like to
Or in
have your
front of
helmet,
other people.
yeah, to have your helmet removed is a sign of defeat, or to remove your helmet is a sign of surrender. I believe is what this means. But like, part of me is just like, then how do you eat? Like,
Yes.
there's like, what is he trying to
Yeah.
do? Like, he's got everything has to come through a straw or something, and just inside the helmet, he's
Eating,
just trying to grab it.
showering.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, dude, so you don't shampoo your hair at all, huh? Like,
Yeah, yeah, and it is interesting because Luke had mentioned on I think it was the last episode that that Mandalorians in one of the TV series, then they would take off their helmet, you know, like it was nothing. So it's really interesting to me that we get this line, which is saying that this is what a true Mandalorian is.
yeah,
And so I
yeah.
wish that we had Luke on this episode for that, but we'll get his thoughts at the beginning of next episode.
Exactly. At the beginning of the next one, we'll give him a few minutes to kind of give his thoughts, because I'm sure that he's got
Yeah,
more to say when it comes to the Purge, because she makes references to that.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
and so I don't know enough about that. I'm assuming that that's from, did you say it's what, from the Clone Wars, the animated series? Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so
We
he,
do also so we do get her the steelsmith asking him how his current armor was damaged. And then he says that it was by whatever creature. And then
yeah,
she says, "Okay, this will be your signet." And then he says, "No," and that is actually really great. That it's calling back to him memories of the Yoda baby, who of course
yes,
he
good
doesn't
point.
want to think about anymore, right? He's
And
trying
that
to move
he
on,
didn't,
and
yeah,
to have that as his signet would be a constant reminder about it.
yeah,
So he
yeah.
has to turn that down.
And to say, it was an enemy who helped me. And she's like, why would an enemy do that? And it's because he didn't know that he was my enemy, or it didn't know that it was my enemy. Yeah, and that you could see like there's guilt there of, oh man,
Yeah,
I would have died if it wasn't for this thing. And so you have that whole compulsion as well, where like that motivating factor to go and rescue this little child, because it's not just that um, it's kind of helpless and all of that, but there's also a certain element of, I do owe it my life.
right. Yeah,
So
yeah, and it is, yeah, because it's really interesting because when he says that it was his enemy,
yeah,
um, then like thinking through that, I think our instinctual response to that is, what did the baby do to harm you, right? But it's not that. It's that he was really the enemy to the child.
that's right.
And I think that is really, really effective, really, yeah, just really well done because he betrayed the child. He became the enemy of the child.
Yeah,
by turning over the child. And
Right.
yeah, and all that guilt of it. He considers himself to be an enemy to the child. So
Right.
it's so well done. So much said with so little words.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying is that, and I'm not trying to, like, I want to appreciate it on its own terms. And it's not, I don't want for this to be just a comparison thing. But I do think that it contrasts so much with, episodes 7 and 8, with Star Wars. And I mean, you could say the same thing. I would say far less so with Rogue One and Solo, but certainly episodes 7 and 8, then you've got everyone saying everything that they're thinking almost all the time.
Almost all the time.
Right? There's some notable exceptions, right? Like clearly you don't have the plan of what, prom dress woman has in, episode 8. Like that's a notable exception. But aside from that, then you've got all of these characters who are emoting like crazy. It's so like it's on their face all the time. There's nothing restrained. There's nothing subtle. Everybody is hyper emotional.
Yeah, I will admit that for the most part, and there are
I'm not
notable
saying
exceptions.
I'm not saying
but,
bad. I'm saying that it's a contrast because it's genuinely. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm saying like that's interpretive, whether you think that's a good or bad thing, and whether it's consistent with the rest of Star Wars canon or not. So I'm not. It's not a judgment that I'm making. I'm saying that this show, what I appreciate is that it is distinguishing itself from episodes 7 and 8, what the Star Wars films are doing in comparison to what this series is doing, and that the tone and the style of storytelling is very different. And I appreciate that, and I really, really like what we're getting with The Mandalorian. And like just from a personal standpoint, I don't like that in episodes 7 and 8, but I don't have an issue if other people do. Like it's fine if it's your thing. It's just like this is much more my style or my taste. So
so he turns down getting that as his signet. Which what did he call it? A mudhorn, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
My goodness, that would be awful to have that as your signet.
It's so weird because it's like it seemed like he had no idea what to do with this thing when he was fighting it. Like he didn't even really know what it was, and then it's like, and then he knows the name of it.
Yeah,
I'm like, and then like, and he
Unless
says it to
he
her.
just made up that name.
But even then she seemed to know what it meant. She's like, okay, I'll make that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things of like, I don't know. I guess there's a certain element of like, I know what a rhino is, but I have no idea how to fight one. I guess.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
I guess.
Yeah. So then so I was totally thrown off though when the steelsmith said, "Whistling birds," then. And I'm like,
yeah,
that would be a terrible signet. Like,
it's like something like, what is it, like Snow White or something like that? Like all these little birds, like
yeah, just birds everywhere, all over his armor.
Yeah, all these like,
I was like, what is happening now?
Yeah, yeah, but so yeah, he gets that and gives a little bit extra to foundlings, right? Doesn't he do that again here?
Yeah. And he does have some notable parts of his armor that have not yet been converted yet.
Right. What has not been upgraded?
One of his legs, I believe, is still the original armor.
Okay. Yeah, just like C-3PO.
Right.
Right. People have been talking about that again recently, of like his silver leg. They're like,
yeah, it's such an odd detail.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's a thing.
Right. But yeah, I believe that's another one of those examples of the Mandela effect, that people are like, he had gold legs and now one of his legs in the original films is silver, but I remember it being all gold. And
right.
then it's like, whoa, did something just happen in the Matrix? Matrix, where everything just changed and it was a little
Yeah.
glitch.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's got basically like a C-3PO leg at this point. It's just like
Yes.
doesn't quite match the rest. Yeah. So anyway, so he goes onto the ship. Of course, has this through visual storytelling, sees the shifter knob, and then just makes his decision. He shuts it down, and he's just like, "I'm going in." And
Yeah. But he
he
doesn't say that.
no, he doesn't. He doesn't say that. You get like none of these like cool lines of dialogue. It's just I love. It's one of those things where when I'm writing uh, fiction, when I'm writing a short story or a novel, that is one of those elements where I say you can do it in film, but you can't do it in literature, and
Nice.
it does like, and I've had multiple moments like that where it's just like I don't want the character to say anything, and I just want to visually tell the reader what's happening, but it really doesn't work in literature to try to do that. I'm not saying that you always have to have dialogue or interior like inner monologues or anything like that, um,
Right.
but it's a lot harder to tell a story without having any dialogue or any internal monologue happening.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And I mean, even, with the narration,
yeah,
right? In a novel, like people are going to be reading narration, and
yeah,
that in and of itself
is a
tells
kind of
more
telling. Yes.
than, yeah.
And that's the
So
thing
it's,
is in film, then like who is the narrator is such an interesting question because
yeah.
it's the camera that's the narrator that's just pointing at things saying, look at this, that's the story.
Yeah.
And then when you bring in an external narrator or characters who are narrating their own story, it usually is a sign of bad filmmaking.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's like because a lot of filmmakers don't understand that, and as much criticism as there is of taking film theory in a university, there's a certain element of you should have a certain amount of a theoretical foundation before you go into filmmaking or as you grow as a filmmaker to
Yeah.
understand that principle of who is the narrator in film as opposed to in literature or in a stage production, right?
Right.
that
Yeah.
that this is just it's a different form of storytelling. You have to appreciate it for what it is, which
Yeah.
this series gets. It
Yeah.
gets it so well. um
Absolutely. And yeah, even with this moment of him deciding to stick around, uh, I got the sense, or like, I get the sense that he was not intending on rescuing the child right away, but that he wanted to know what was going to happen to it. He wanted to confirm his suspicions, right? Because he doesn't go
you're
immediately to
right,
break
you are
in.
right. Yeah,
He goes onto the roof and uses his listening device
yeah,
to, yeah, figure out what Werner and the scientist are talking about.
right,
Um, and it's only after he hears, Werner say like, yeah, afterward, destroy it. Um, that's when he actually decides, okay, I have to protect this child.
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And then I think we've already basically talked about this, but using a lot of stealth, a lot of interesting tactics
Oh,
to
yeah.
like,
I mean, destroying the essentially camera outside,
yeah,
in order to convince the the stormtroopers to come out.
right,
Um, uh, so amazing. I love every moment of this. I love that you put that on the light box there,
right.
because it's so true. Anyone who doesn't know, Metal Gear Solid is my absolute favorite game series. I believe it's yours as well.
Sure.
Uh,
I mean, I don't play a lot of video games anymore, but when I did, then
right.
it was my favorite series. Yeah.
Yeah, it is such effective cinematic storytelling in
Yeah.
that game series. So compelling, and it's all about stealth action. It was described, the genre was described as tactical espionage action,
Right.
and that's essentially what we get here. Not so much the espionage, but it is tactical action, and it's so satisfying to see it play out with him being so stealthy. Yeah, he might be using loud weapons and planting explosives and things like that, but he's still hiding behind boxes. He's waiting to get the jump on them.
That's right.
He's all of that. It's so incredibly well done.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that's
Um,
what I want the Metal Gear Solid movie to be. Just
right.
I
Exactly.
just
That's
want the whole movie to be that.
right. That's exactly it. And that's why, like, that's what I'm saying is that I love this so much about this episode is to see that style of fighting that he has. Because like when he goes against the Jawas in whatever it is, like I guess episode 2, is that it?
Yeah.
Um, or even when he was in episode 1, when he's with that whatever it is, that battle droid thing, the bounty hunter droid,
Right.
the what is it called? I something.
IG-11.
IG-11. Like,
Oh wait, no, wait. Yeah, IG-11.
yeah, those action sequences, honestly, like they bored me,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and in part because it's such conventional action sequences
Yeah.
where
And
you
it breaks the immersion for you're just like, well, he's standing there trying to open the door, being shot at, but nothing's hitting him, even though he's
exactly, that's
standing
the thing.
basically out in the open.
Yeah,
This is so realistic, where you're watching it and going, yeah, that's how he would have to do it.
that's how you would have to do it. That's exactly it. And as far as the stakes, there's actual stakes in this because it's not so
Right.
much that you're worried that the Mandalorian is going to get killed, because you don't think that, but you don't know whether he's going to be successful. You don't know if he's going to ultimately lose Baby Yoda, that they're going to actually like
Mhm.
capture him, or you know what I mean? Like
And,
it could,
and regarding this episode in particular, where earlier than we get the mention of has his helmet ever come off, you get kind of that
yeah,
uh, tension as well of like,
yeah,
well, maybe that will be the ultimate insult for
yeah,
him, right? Like if he gets captured and then they take off his helmet, like that would be horrifying for him.
right.
And you get that, like even though you're just like whatever, it's just a helmet, then you know enough now that if that were to happen, you would be shocked. You would feel for him. Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and that's the thing for this entire action sequence, both with him going in rescuing Baby Yoda and then going out, and you have all of like the bounty hunters who are now going after him with all the fobs going off. Uh,
yeah,
with that, then you feel, to me at least, it feels like there's actual stakes. But when you're looking at him fighting what was that like hairy rhino thing called? The
the Mudhorn.
the Mudhorn. Like I didn't really feel like there were any real stakes with that. It's just like oh, just throw this action sequence out there and it'll be fun
Right.
for people to watch. And when he's going up against the Jawas, do you really feel like, oh no, like what if the Jawas win, right?
Yeah,
Or trying to infiltrate that one, base to before he knows what he's going after, right? But he knows there's that bounty inside there.
yeah,
But with this, then it's like you genuinely don't know that he's going to be successful, if he might get defeated, if he might get captured, because he's now going up against opponents who, like, for one thing, he's outnumbered. They've got a lot of resources on their side. And you know that there's just going to be more and more opponents who are coming against him. And that he's trying to rescue this very vulnerable creature. So you don't want to see Baby Yoda get recaptured or hurt.
yeah.
But before this, like, what was there? If he like lost against the Mudhorn, oh, okay, then he can't fix his ship.
Right.
Like, that's not that big of a deal. But it's like in
Then
this,
he'd
it's
have to
like
somehow get a different ship.
right. But with this, and it's like, well, if he loses, then they're gonna murder the cutest little creature we've ever seen. And
Absolutely.
right, so you're like, don't let that happen.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I realized at some point we skipped over the scene where he meets up with
right.
Carl Weathers and asks him, how many different fobs did you give out?
Sure.
Um,
No,
and
he
yeah,
asked
it's
he asked Werner Herzog that. How many fobs did he give
Oh,
out?
okay, yeah,
But he
yeah,
does meet up with Carl Weathers and then asks him the question of what are they going to do with it? Like, because he's trying to get another bounty at
right,
that point,
yeah,
right? And it's like, oh, yeah, you guys got to stay busy, right? But he's
yeah,
telling him to take some time off.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, and that's where he can't help himself. And then Carl Weathers kind of scolds him as well, saying, hey, no, in the guild, we don't ask that question.
yeah,
But it's interesting, though, because Carl Weathers had already kind of answered the question at the beginning of it, because you get that little hologram version of him at the very beginning of the
right,
episode. He's like, I don't know what he's going to do with it, if he's going to eat it or mount it on his wall.
right,
So he already
yeah,
answered the question of what are
yeah,
you going to do? Like, what's this guy going to do with it? Because he's already said, I don't know. It could be this weird thing. It could be this weird thing.
yeah. Now, do you think that Carl Weathers knew what it was beforehand?
He must have. He must have at least had a sense because he knew that it wasn't dangerous. Because he says that, like, unless the Mandalorian, took some kind of video of the little Yoda creature and then sent it to Carl Weathers to say, I've got the bounty. But even that wouldn't
Right,
make sense because how would he know that, oh, that's attached to that fob, right?
right,
So, but
yeah,
he tells him, I don't know whether he wants to eat it or if he wants to mount it on his wall. There's no indication that Carl Weathers thinks of this thing as being dangerous, being a
right,
criminal, being anything other than, like, oh, if he wants to eat it, it's like probably fairly small, or mount it on his wall. It's probably fairly small. It's not this massive creature. It's not like, why would you mount
yeah,
like a big, like tall, like guy on your wall, right? Why would
yeah,
you eat a person? But he knows that it's something odd. That it's not just a super
right,
dangerous criminal. So to
yeah,
me, that indicates that he probably does have a pretty good sense of what it is.
true. Um, yeah. So then we get this huge sequence where Mando is just trying to get to his ship,
Yep.
and you've got all the other bounty hunters swarming at him. Uh, and it is really great to see this huge action scene. But as we've mentioned before, it is all the more impressive because we have stakes
Yes.
of, he wants to keep the child safe. He could probably take out all these bounty hunters no problem if he wasn't worried about holding
Hmm.
on to
Hmm.
this
That's what I'm saying.
Yoda baby.
He's got this very, very, very vulnerable creature with him.
Yeah, and that's something that video games do so often. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're invincible, but now you have to do this escort mission," which is
Exactly.
always annoying to everybody.
Right.
But yeah, so that is really awesome to see that. And then we have the entire Mando clan come out. And it is so incredibly satisfying to see all of them show up with their jetpacks on, different kinds of weapons.
Yeah.
I love that they all have, different looks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is really, really satisfying to see them all show up and look out for one of their own without having a line where they say, "We look out for each other," or
Yeah.
anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
No, hiding behind cover like, "Oh, I thought you guys hated me. Look, we may have our differences, but we look out for," because that's in so many action films.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, no, you're totally right with that. And it, on the one hand, that I know they're,
Oh, wait. I lost your audio.
oh, hang on.
All right. Yeah,
All right, how's that?
yeah, that's good.
Okay. So I know that somebody might criticize it and say that there's like a Deus Ex Machina, like, ending by having all the Mandalorians just show up. But to me, that it made sense because
Yeah,
you had because it's not a Deus Ex Machina ending, right? Like, and for anybody who's just like heard it but they don't know what it is, it just means like God out of the machine, right? That like these
yeah,
like Roman plays of like, oh, and then like a god descended down from the sky and then fixed everything, right? And it's like,
yeah,
what? You never said that there was any like godlike figure who cared about what was happening and was ultimately going to intervene. It's that you
yeah,
did show them So to me, it seemed like a logical place to go with the episode of you show they're all there. They are this oppressed group of people who are warriors who don't want to be in this underground type of life. And it was the Empire that put them there, and the Empire's not there anymore. And so you go, okay, like you've kind of you've introduced all of them.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who complains that this is a Deus Ex Machina, like, look back at A New Hope. Like, Han Solo comes back and saves Luke right there at the end.
Right, but I'm saying
kind of thing.
That there is something to that. Like, I think it's fair to criticize something when it really does do that, but it's that the point here is in storytelling. If you have introduced other characters and you've said, if it makes sense, then sure, you can do that. And it's not Deus Ex Machina then. Because the whole point of that is that you're bringing in this character that we've never seen before, who's basically invincible, who all of a sudden shows up and then fixes everything. And then you're like, oh, that's just because you wrote yourself into a corner and you couldn't figure out how to fix it. So then you just introduce this other character. But I'm saying that it's not like that. But the alternative, like, what would the alternative have been? Like, he somehow is able to shoot his way out of there? I would not have liked that. Like, to me, that wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, no, I thought that's where it was going to go.
Me too.
And yeah, when from somewhere else to save him, and I thought, oh, who could that be? Is it, like, I don't know, like, I didn't really clue in immediately as to who it was, and then when I saw all the other Mandalorians, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Right, exactly. I know, and I thought the same thing, because I did not expect them to come to his aid, and then when they did, then I'm like, yeah, that's great, it's exciting, and it makes sense. So everything that a good teleplay or screenplay should do.
Absolutely.
So, and then, of course, he it ultimately shoots Carl Weathers, and I thought that was good too, because it showed that Carl Weathers was keeping the Beskar steel right there in his chest pocket. So I'm like, that was another one of those things where he shoots him right in the heart, and then he goes flying, and you're like, he's dead, but he's not really, because you did already present it to us. You showed us that he's got that right there.
Absolutely. I know when he opened his eyes, I was like, how did he survive a blaster bolt? And then, like, he, like, reaches in and I'm like, oh, that's right.
Exactly. I know.
And it was so satisfying.
So it's another example of a really good screenplay. Is it Jon Favreau who wrote this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe he wrote the whole first season.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, so you get that incredible moment there. So he's on the ship, flying away to who knows where, probably meeting up with the guy on that other planet.
Right.
But probably to ask him more questions about what do you know about this child. I think that's that
would make sense. Yeah.
Logical step. But yeah, and then he looks out. One of the other Mandalorians flies by, salutes him, which is great. And Mando does not salute back.
Right.
Which he does, like, a little bit of a nod. But I think that's very effective because
I thought so too.
Yeah, like, it's this is really good there. And then
everything with him is restrained, right?
Yes.
He's like he's not emoting. He's not like, everything is just like all pulled in tight, where you know what I mean?
But we do get that one brief moment of levity where he says, "I gotta get me one of those." Mm-hmm. It's so fast. It's so perfect. Like, I did literally laugh out loud because we get so few jokes. Like, especially from Mando, that this one really stands out, and it's so effective because it's so unexpected from him.
Yeah.
Because it's so, he's not saying it really to be funny. He's really just like, that would be so nice.
Exactly.
But it comes across as funny because it's like, we all kind of want one of those. And
right.
Clearly, if everybody else has one, why don't you have one?
I know. And do you get the impression that he's younger than all the other Mandalorians?
Now that you mention it, then yes. 'Cause yeah, I know we like I had mentioned in previous episodes that I thought that maybe he wasn't, a true Mandalorian, right? That he
Yeah.
was found and just brought into this culture, but for him to just be younger and to have survived the purge when the others were perhaps fighting in the purge,
Mhm.
then that would actually make a lot of sense, and that's why, yeah, that's why we get a lot of what we do from him.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And that's kind of my impression as well. That yeah, he is a little bit younger, and so they just seemed a lot more grizzled and world weary than he is,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And that would make sense why he doesn't, have the jetpack yet.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, that's something like, oh, you only get that when you hit 40 or something,
right.
right?
Yeah. I feel like that could be either the season finale for
Sure.
season one is
Yeah.
him getting a jetpack, or the season premiere of season two.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. Yeah, yeah, it could be either one. I do see it more as being the end of season one, kind of like at the end of the Matrix when it's like, oh, Neo can now fly.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I could also see them like trying to do all the marketing for season two
Yep,
around he has a jetpack now.
that's right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, like overall, it was great. Now that we're 3 episodes in, and is it 8 that we're getting?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so we're 3 episodes in, and I, every episode that we've watched, then I go, that was great. I don't know if this is gonna sustain itself. I don't know if it's gonna
Right.
remain good, but yeah. So I'm like, oh no, now you've really set the bar pretty high.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll
No,
see.
I definitely do think that the next episode is going to be him going back to the planet that he found the Yoda baby, talking to Nick Nolte's character about that. Um, Maybe IG-11 somehow is repaired now, and yeah.
Yeah. Um,
But I'm willing to be surprised. I feel like now I've turned around from from how I was last week. But but yeah, I do see this series going essentially how you had predicted last week. Um, but I am definitely willing to be surprised.
yeah. Yeah, me too. But yeah, I do think that's ultimately what it's going to be. It's that all the bounty hunters in the galaxy are after him, and he's going to have to recruit these people to help him and get to the bottom of what's going on with this Yoda creature. And we're starting to get more and more like it seems by the end of this episode, it's now like, all right, we've got a sense of where this is going. But it's interesting that it takes 3 episodes out of an 8 episode first season to even really know where this is going.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I do want to briefly mention uh, the Yoda creature who has the Force, clearly, or is able to use the Force, I should say. Um, I am conflicted on what that means for the rest of the Star Wars universe because it's kind of the same issue that I had when it was revealed that Anakin had a Padawan of his own, and then I'm like, but why didn't we hear about this in Episode 3 or anywhere else? And apparently, like his Padawan actually is still alive between Episodes 3 and 4.
Mm.
Anyway, I feel the same way about this, where like the Yoda creature, I guess would be 80 by the time that like around 80 by the time episode 7 and 8 take place.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that means for that type of creature, but it's it's interesting that we don't really get any discussion of him or of him, being part of Luke's Jedi school or anything like that. Um, yeah, so I don't
That's a
know.
great point. That is a really good point. That there is something to that of introducing a character of this significance, at least a creature
Hmm.
of this race with that much significance at this point in the Star Wars timeline, but
Yeah,
there's no reference to it at all in episode 7 or 8, even though we do have significant moments with Luke Skywalker and him training this next generation of Jedi.
yeah.
Huh. That is interesting. I wonder if this is going to get incorporated into episode 9 because doesn't this go right up until the release of episode 9 or does it overlap at all?
Uh, that is a good question. I
I
guess
know
if we
that
have
the release
5 more
schedule.
episodes, then
Okay.
um, yeah, I believe it'll overlap a little bit.
Okay. But I do know
Yeah.
that the 1 week, as far as the release schedule, then it's not coming out on the Friday. I believe it's coming out on the Wednesday because then episode 9 is going to come out on the Thursday. So they are changing up the release schedule a little bit to accommodate that.
Okay. All right.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
wonder
interesting.
that that episode might be really interesting if like we get a little bit more with the Yoda creature and then people go and watch episode 9 and it's like, whoa, there's a Yoda creature in there.
Right.
If
Yeah.
Disney doesn't do that, like they're missing out on a lot of money at the box office because
Oh
people are
yeah.
falling in love with this thing.
Yes. And I mean, and of course, and they're all going to be paying for Disney Plus if they don't already have it. I was
Correct.
confused by the Yoda creature. Oh, you have to
That's
get
right.
Disney Plus and watch the
Yeah, to
series.
tie it in like
Um,
that, especially with it
yeah.
overlapping, that would make so much sense. I at this point, even though like we just started talking about it, but like I'd be shocked if they don't do that. Uh,
Yeah.
it would just be such a
Yeah.
missed opportunity because you are
Yeah.
right that like incorporating a creature like this of Yoda's race who does have the Force at this point in the timeline. Uh, it does seem strange that we haven't had any mention of it in episode 7 or 8, but we know how these films have been made, that there has not really been much of a plan. It has not
Yeah.
been like what Marvel Studios did, where they've got their phase 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, where it was all mapped out. This is like they are flying by the seat of their pants, right? This is pantser writing compared to plotter writing. Like plotter,
Yes.
like it's all plotted out ahead of time, but like then there's a pantser writers, like this is in the writing world. Are you a plotter or a pantser? Like it's just by the seat of your pants. Oh, just make it up, you know?
Yeah. Yep. No, I mean that combined with the uh, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge ride not being open yet, like one
Mm,
of the two rides in that land,
mm.
and I had already, previously thought that maybe it has something to do with Episode 9, or ties in some way, and that's why they're holding off on actually opening it. Um, and yeah, tying all this together, I could definitely see there being synergy
Yeah.
between these.
And I mean, I've heard too, because there's been a lot of talk in the last week or two that episode 9 is not finished. J.J. Abrams has said this multiple times in the last week that he
Oof.
said some parts of the film are 100% finished and other parts are 10% finished.
Oh my goodness.
And they're less than a month away. And they're like, oh no, it's not done. And so, but I know, which is not a good sign.
No.
That's never good. Never good if you are that close to the release of a film. And it should be all marketing at this point. They should not be doing anything. Um,
Yeah.
but it makes me wonder though if they are frantically, like okay, age that baby Yoda 30 years and now it's like just throw it in, put it somewhere, put it
Right.
somewhere, like incorporate it into the film. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they
I
wanted to see and they're like, oh, well, this is how people are reacting. And like just we've got to tie that in. Because I mean,
yeah.
that's like that's Disney of all of
Oh yeah.
these tie-ins, right? Just tie it in this way and in this way and connect it because they know they're going to make more money the more they tie it in. Because like the Disney Plus memberships are going to go up. People seeing episode 9 is going to go up. Merchandise is going to go up.
For
People
sure.
visiting the amusement parks is going to go up or theme parks. It's all that's going to go up
Yeah.
the more they do it. So Yeah, that is interesting. Like, because it's a good point that you bring up. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't, and yeah, that's why I'm conflicted on it because like I don't really want everything to be like, oh, you have to see this in
Hmm.
order to understand that and whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, I do watch all these things, so I
Yeah, I mean,
kind of like to be rewarded.
yeah, and I think that there's a big difference between like an 8 episode series on Disney Plus and then seeing a movie compared to like what DC is doing, like where we had our podcast on
Right.
that and like Luke walked us through like all of the connections between what is it, like 4 or 5 different shows on TV that
Yeah.
are interconnected. And then you've got the whole DC cinematic universe. Like,
Right.
I mean, like, yeah, this doesn't seem as demanding.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. And the typical fan of this franchise is willing to put in that much time
Yeah,
anyway. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, all right. So are we finished then with episode 3?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, looking forward to episode 4. I
Yeah,
hope that it goes in an interesting direction.
me too. Yeah, I know they've set the bar pretty high with this episode, which is great. Oh, the other thing that I did want to mention, and I might as well do it now. So, just one other point, like just as a reminder that like Deborah Chow, who directed this, she did such a great job. And just for your own interest and mine, interesting. She is from Toronto, grew up in Toronto.
Oh,
And then went to McGill. And then, as far as her TV credits, she directed an episode or episodes of the TV series Rookie Blue. I don't know if you ever watched that. I think it was on Global.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, I have not watched it, but I am aware of it.
I've watched the entire series, and it's pretty good. Murdoch Mysteries as well.
Oh, okay.
She directed that. And then Mr. Robot. I don't know if you watched that, but
I have not watched that one either.
yeah, but I've watched the first season of that. But it's interesting though that yeah, so first female director for live action Star Wars and Canadian from Toronto, Murdoch
Yeah.
Mysteries fame. It's really
Woo!
interesting because I'm like Murdoch Mysteries to Star Wars to the Mandalorian. I'm like okay,
Yeah.
but
Now, I believe in the States, Murdoch Mysteries is referred to as the Artful Detective or something like that.
I don't
I
know.
believe it actually has a different name
Oh yeah, a
for
lot of these shows end up having a
American
different name.
audiences. So,
Rookie Blue, I believe, is called Copper elsewhere. So
oh, okay, yeah,
yeah,
just for the clarity of our audience.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, she did a great job. I hope that like we're gonna get more episodes this season directed by her. But even if
absolutely.
not, it makes me excited for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series because I'm
Yes,
like, if she's involved, especially if she's heavily involved, that's great. Because if we get anything even close to the visual storytelling that we get and the subtlety with all these people wearing helmets and we know what they're thinking and feeling, like
yes,
I mean, and so much of that is direction. It's not like acting choices. I think a lot of that is direction of choosing what's going to be on screen and the angle that you're
yes,
going to use, the lighting that you're going to use, telling the editor, and obviously editors are making decisions as well. Like they're heavily influential in this. But I'm saying I'm crediting her with a lot of the success with this episode, and
yeah,
of course,
yeah,
screenwriting too of Jon Favreau.
yes.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to comment below and like, share, and all of that stuff. Subscribe, and yeah, for Luke, we're gonna get his comments at the beginning of the next review when we
Yeah,
do
once
episode
once we
4.
rescue him, that's
Yeah, exactly. We've got to get him from that crazy Werner Herzog character.
it's okay. I think I've got a few buddies with jetpacks, so we'll we'll be good.
Sweet, good deal. All right, folks. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.